I sent her 47,000 pounds over 2 years. I called her my wife. I told my daughter about her. But she was never mine. She had 3 other men. 3. And I was just the one who paid the most. My flat in Bristol had become a tomb. Every morning I woke up to silence. Every evening I ate dinner alone. My wife Margaret had been gone for 2 years, taken by cancer that ate through her like acid. 38 years of marriage, gone. Our daughter Claire lived in Australia with her own family now. I understood. She had her life, but understanding didn't make the silence any easier. I was 68 years old and I had nothing left but memories and an empty house that smelled like old tea and regret. One night, scrolling through Facebook because I couldn't sleep, I found a group called Retire to the Philippines, Expat Life. I don't know why I joined. Maybe curiosity. Maybe desperation. I posted a single question asking about the cost of living in Manila. Within an hour, someone replied. Her name was Rosario. Her profile picture showed a young woman with dark hair and a smile that seemed to glow through the screen. She wrote, "Hi Edgar, I can help you with any questions. I'm from Subic. Welcome to the group." It was polite, simple, but she used my name. No one had used my name in a conversation in weeks. I replied, "Thank you, Rosario. That's very kind." She responded almost immediately. "Are you planning to visit, or just curious?" I told her I was just curious, that I'd lost my wife and was thinking about a change. I don't know why I shared that. Maybe because she was a stranger. Maybe because it felt safe. She wrote back, "I'm so sorry for your loss. That must be very hard. My father passed away last year. I know how lonely it can feel." I stared at that message for a long time. She didn't offer empty condolences. She just understood. We started messaging daily. She asked about Margaret, about our life together, about how I was coping. She told me about her family, her mother Luz, who struggled with diabetes, her 2 younger brothers June and Carlo, who were looking for work. She sent me pictures of Subic, the beaches, the markets, the sunsets. She sent me a selfie holding a handwritten note that said, "Thinking of you, Edgar." I felt something shift in my chest, something I hadn't felt since Margaret died. Hope. Within 3 weeks, we were talking on video calls every night. She'd sit in her small room, the walls painted pale yellow, a single fan spinning behind her. She always smiled when she saw me. "Hi, baby," she'd say, and I'd feel my heart squeeze. We talked about everything. She asked me about my job at the Postal Service, about Bristol, about what I missed most about Margaret. I told her things I hadn't told Claire. I told her I felt invisible, that I woke up every day wondering if anyone would notice if I didn't. Rosario listened. She never interrupted. She never judged. She just nodded and said, "You're not invisible to me, Edgar. I see you." One night, lying in bed after our call, I thought to myself, maybe this is my second chance. Maybe I'm allowed to feel something again. Maybe she's the reason I'm still here. 2 months into our daily conversations, Rosario called me in tears. I answered immediately, my stomach tightening with worry. "What's wrong?" I asked. She was sobbing, her face streaked with tears. "It's my mother, Edgar. She's sick. She needs surgery. They found something in her stomach. The doctors say if we don't do it soon, she could die." My chest ached. I thought of Margaret in her final days, the hospital visits, the helplessness. "How much do you need?" I asked before I could stop myself. Rosario shook her head, wiping her eyes. "No, baby, I can't ask you for money. We just met. I just needed someone to talk to." But I could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation. "How much?" I repeated. She hesitated. 800 pounds. "But Edgar, I don't want you to feel like you have to." I didn't think. I just acted. "I'll send it tomorrow," I said. Her eyes widened. "Edgar, no, that's too much." But I'd already made up my mind. I wanted to help. I needed to help. I needed to be useful to someone again. The next morning, I went to the Western Union office on Gloucester Road. The woman behind the counter asked for the recipient's name and location. I spelled out Rosario's name carefully, handed over the cash, and watched as the transaction went through. 800 pounds. Gone. But I didn't feel regret. I felt proud. That evening, Rosario called me, crying again, but this time with gratitude. "You're an angel, Edgar. You saved my mother's life. I will never forget this." Never. She blew me a kiss through the screen. I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. My daughter Claire texted me that night. "Hey Dad, how are you doing?" I almost told her about Rosario. Almost. But something stopped me. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe fear that she'd tell me I was being foolish. So I just replied, "I'm fine, love. Just keeping busy." A week later, Rosario sent me a photo. Her mother, Luz, lying in a hospital bed, smiling weakly at the camera. "She's recovering, Edgar. Because of you." I stared at that photo for a long time. This is real, I told myself. She needs me, and I need to be needed. 3 months after we started talking, I booked a flight to Manila. I didn't tell Claire. I told myself I'd explain later, once I was sure this was real. Rosario met me at the airport, and the moment I saw her, my breath caught. She was more beautiful in person. She wore a simple yellow dress, her hair pulled back, and when she spotted me, she ran. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my chest. "You're really here," she whispered. I held her tight, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, feeling her warmth. "I'm here," I said. We took a bus to Subic, and she held my hand the entire way, pointing out landmarks, telling me stories about her childhood. When we arrived at her house, a small concrete structure with a tin roof, her family was waiting. Luz hugged me like I was her own son. "Thank you, Edgar. Thank you for saving me." June and Carlos shook my hand, calling me Kuya Edgar, older brother. They prepared a feast, dishes I didn't recognize but ate gratefully. We sat around a low table, laughing, talking, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. I felt like I belonged. Rosario and I spent 2 weeks together. We visited beaches where the sand was white and the water impossibly blue. We ate street food from vendors who called her by name. We walked through markets, her arm looped through mine, and I felt the stares, an old white man with a young Filipina woman. I knew what people thought, but I didn't care. At night, we sat on the porch of her house, talking until the stars came out. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered one night, her head resting on my shoulder. I kissed the top of her head. "I think I'm falling in love with you too." On my last night, we stood at the airport, her eyes red from crying. "I don't want you to go," she said, her voice breaking. "I wish you didn't have to go." I cupped her face in my hands. "I'll come back, I promise." On the plane home, I opened my journal and wrote, "This is my second chance at happiness. I'm going to marry this woman." Back in Bristol, I couldn't stop thinking about Rosario. I woke up at odd hours to call her because of the time difference. I started sending her 300 pounds every month to help with bills. She never asked, but I wanted to. I needed her to know I was serious. 4 months later, I booked another flight. This time, I brought a ring. I'd bought it from a small jeweler near my flat, a simple silver band with a tiny diamond. I couldn't afford much, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the promise. I took Rosario to a quiet beach in Subic, the sun setting behind us, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I got down on one knee, my joints aching, and held out the ring. "Rosario, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Edgar, yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled me into a kiss that tasted like salt and tears, and something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. We had a small ceremony at a local chapel the next week. It wasn't legal, but it felt real. Luz, June, Carlo, and a few of Rosario's friends attended. The priest blessed us, and we exchanged vows. I called her my wife. She called me her husband. When I returned to Bristol, I started telling people. I called her my wife in messages to old coworkers. I updated my Facebook status, but when I finally told Claire over the phone, her voice went cold. "Dad, are you sure about this?" she asked. "You barely know her." I felt my jaw tighten. "I know her better than you think," I said. She makes me happy, Claire. Isn't that what matters? There was a long pause. I just don't want you to get hurt. I almost laughed. I've already been hurt, Claire. Your mother died. I've been hurt. This is me trying to live again. She sighed. Okay, Dad. If you're happy, I'm happy. But I could hear the doubt in her voice. She's young, I thought. She doesn't understand loneliness. I started the visa process immediately. I hired an immigration lawyer, a man named Mr. Patel, who worked out of a cramped office in the city center. He was blunt, professional, but I trusted him. It's a long process, he warned. Spousal visas require proof of relationship, photos, messages, financial records, and it can take months. I nodded. I had everything. Photos from Subic, our messages, bank transfers. Months passed. Rosario called me anxious, crying, I hate waiting, Edgar. I just want to be with you. I sent her £1,200 for visa processing fees, then another £800 for document translations. She thanked me each time, but her voice sounded distant, tired. Finally, the letter came. I opened it with shaking hands. Application denied. Insufficient proof of relationship. I read it 3 times, my vision blurring. I called Rosario immediately. She was devastated. What does that mean, Edgar? Why won't they let us be together? Her voice broke and I wanted to reach through the screen and hold her. We'll try again, I said. In 6 months. We'll gather more proof. I promise. But 6 months felt like forever. Rosario called me one night, her voice small. Edgar, I need help with rent. My landlord is threatening to evict us. I didn't hesitate. I started sending £500 every month. I stopped eating out. I canceled my newspaper subscription, my streaming services. I cooked cheap meals, pasta and beans, and told myself it was temporary. Once she's here, everything will be fine. But my bank account was shrinking. I looked at my statement one night, adding up the transfers. £47,000 over 2 years. I felt my stomach twist. I'm running out of money. One night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and picked up my phone. I opened Facebook, scrolling aimlessly. Rosario had posted a photo earlier that day. She was at a beach resort with friends, smiling, holding a drink. I zoomed in, my chest tightening. There was a man's arm around her waist in the background, just an arm, but it was there. I messaged her immediately. Who's the guy in your photo? Hours passed. No reply. I refreshed the page obsessively. Finally, at 3 a.m., she responded, That's my cousin, baby. Don't worry. I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her, but I couldn't stop looking at that photo. I started scrolling through her profile, something I'd never done before. Older posts, tagged photos, comments from men I didn't recognize. One name appeared repeatedly, David from Sydney. He'd written under a photo from a year ago, Miss you, babe. My heart pounded. I messaged Rosario again. Who is David? She called me immediately, her voice sharp. Edgar, what are you doing? Why are you stalking my Facebook? I flinched at the word stalking. I'm not stalking. I just saw his comment. Who is he? She sighed. He's just a friend. An old friend. You're being paranoid, Edgar. I love you. You're my husband. But the word felt hollow now. A week later, I got a message from a stranger. The name was Thomas. The message read, I think we need to talk about Rosario. My hands started shaking. I clicked on his profile. He was from Canada, mid-50s, graying hair. He'd sent screenshots, messages between him and Rosario. I love you, Thomas. I can't wait to see you again. Photos of them together, her arm around his waist, her lips on his cheek, a video. I clicked play, Rosario's voice clear as day. You're my love, Thomas. My only love. I felt my chest collapse. I couldn't breathe. I messaged Thomas back. How long have you known her? His reply came fast. A year. I've been sending her money. I thought we were engaged. I found out about you because I saw a mutual friend's post. How much have you sent her? I couldn't type. My fingers wouldn't move. Finally, I wrote, "Too much." I started digging. I found David in Sydney. I found Carl in the US. All of them had the same story: messages, photos, promises, money. I messaged Rosario. "Tell me this isn't real." She didn't reply for 2 days. When she finally did, all she wrote was, "I can explain. Please, Edgar, don't leave me." But I was already gone. I sat in my flat, staring at my phone, whispering to myself, I was never special. I was just easy. I got her on a video call 3 days later. She looked different, tired. She was sitting in a room I didn't recognize, cleaner, brighter. I didn't waste time. "How many men are there, Rosario?" She looked away. "Edgar, please. How many?" She exhaled slowly. 3. You, Thomas, and Carl. David stopped sending money last year. I felt something break inside me. "Why?" She shrugged, her face hard. "Because I needed to survive, Edgar. You don't understand what it's like here. You think sending a few £100 makes you a hero?" I stared at her. "Did you ever love me?" She looked away again. "I cared about you. But no, not the way you wanted." I ended the call. I blocked her number. I deleted Facebook. I sat in silence for hours, the weight of her words crushing me. Claire flew in from Australia 2 weeks later. I'd finally told her everything. She sat across from me in my flat, her eyes red. "Dad, I'm so sorry." I shook my head. "Don't be. I was stupid." She grabbed my hand. "You weren't stupid. You were lonely," and she took advantage of that. I'd lost £47,000. My savings were nearly gone. I couldn't afford the retirement cruise I'd planned. I started attending a support group for romance scam victims, held in a church basement every Thursday. The first time I spoke, my voice cracked. "I'm Edgar, and I was scammed by someone I loved." The room nodded. I wasn't alone. 6 months later, I took a part-time job at a bookshop on Park Street. It didn't pay much, but it was something. I talked to Claire more. I didn't date. I didn't join online groups. One evening, I got a message request on Facebook. A woman named Isabel. "Rosario scammed my brother too. She's still active, using a new name." I stared at the message. Then I blocked her. I didn't need to know anymore. I'd learned the only lesson that matters. Love, when it's real, doesn't ask you to prove it with money. And the woman who called me her husband was never my wife. She was a stranger who knew exactly what to say, and I let myself believe her because I wanted to, because loneliness is louder than doubt, and sometimes that's all it takes.